The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched beyond what human eyes could fully see. Its walls curved upward into darkness, covered with symbols that shifted and changed like living things. At the center sat beings from across the galaxy, each more strange and wonderful than the last. The Zephyrians looked like walking crystals, their bodies catching light and splitting it into rainbow patterns. When they moved, their forms rang like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. They had built cities from pure thought and could reshape matter with their minds. Next to them floated the Collective, a group that shared one mind across thousands of bodies. They spoke in perfect harmony, never disagreeing because they were all one being. Their ships moved like schools of fish, each part knowing what every other part would do. The ethereals barely had bodies at all. They were beings of pure energy, glowing softly in colors that had no names. They had learned to travel between dimensions and could exist in several places at once. There were dozens of other species, each one having mastered some aspect of the universe that humans could barely understand. They all waited now for the newest applicants to arrive. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching the massive station grow larger on their screens. Her ship was humanity's finest warship, but compared to the alien vessels around it, it looked like a tin can held together with tape and hope. "Approaching Docking Bay 7, called out Lieutenant Rodriguez from his station. "Their computers are trying to talk to ours, but it's like watching a professor argue with a toaster." Chen smiled despite her nerves. Rodriguez was right. Human technology was simple, crude, and built with materials they dug out of the ground. The aliens probably wondered how they had even made it this far. "Ma'am," said Dr. Elena Vasquez, the mission's chief diplomat, "are you sure about this? We could still withdraw our application." Chen shook her head. "Humanity deserves a place among the stars. We've earned it." The docking was rough. Human ships were not designed for the delicate dance that alien technology made look easy. But they managed it. And soon Chen was walking down a corridor that seemed to be made of liquid light. The other human delegates joined her. Dr. Vasquez with her careful diplomatic smile. General Morrison, who looked like he wanted to study every weapon system he saw. And Professor Kim, who kept taking notes on everything around them. They entered the Great Hall, and immediately Chen felt the weight of thousands of alien eyes upon them. The humans looked so small and plain compared to the wonders around them. They wore simple uniforms made of cloth and metal, carried primitive communication devices, and walked on legs instead of floating through the air. A sound rippled through the assembly. It took Chen a moment to realize what it was: laughter. Not cruel laughter, but the kind adults make when children try to do grown-up things. The speaker was a Zephyrian whose crystal body rang with musical tones. "Welcome, humans of Earth," it said, its voice like silver bells. "We are pleased to consider your application to join our galactic community." Dr. Vasquez stepped forward. "Thank you, honored counselors. We come representing all of humanity, hoping to learn from your wisdom and contribute what we can to galactic civilization." More laughter. Softer this time, but still clear. A representative of the Collective spoke next, all of its bodies speaking as one. "Contribute? Dear humans, what could a species that still fights among itself possibly offer to those who have achieved perfect unity?" General Morrison's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Chen put a gentle hand on his arm. Professor Kim cleared his throat. "We offer our perspective, our diversity, our ability to find new solutions to old problems." An ethereal drifted closer, its energy form shifting between colors. "Diversity," it hummed, "is the word young species use for chaos. Unity is what brings peace to the galaxy." "But diversity brings growth," Chen found herself saying. All eyes turned to her. She had not meant to speak, but now she continued. "Every human is different. We argue, yes. We disagree. But from those disagreements come new ideas, new ways of thinking." The crystal song of Zephyrian laughter filled the hall again. "Captain Chen, is it? Your species still wages war on itself. Your people die from diseases we cured millions of years ago. Your ships are held together with what you call duct tape, if we understand correctly." Chen felt heat rise in her cheeks but kept her voice level. "Yes, we are young. Yes, we make mistakes. But we learn from them, we adapt, we survive." "Survival," spoke a new voice. It belonged to a being that looked like a walking tree made of silver. "All species survive until they do not. What matters is harmony, order, peace." The council spent hours discussing humanity's application. The aliens spoke of their great achievements, perfect societies with no crime, no war, no suffering. They had mastered their environment so completely that they had not needed to change or grow for thousands of years. Finally, the Zephyrian speaker announced their decision. We grant humanity provisional membership in the Galactic Council. You will be assigned territories in the Outer Rim, far from the important trade routes and established civilizations. There you may learn to become a proper spacefaring species. The tone was kind but condescending, like adults giving children a toy to keep them busy. Chen felt her team's disappointment but showed nothing on her face. We are honored, Dr. Vasquez said with perfect diplomatic courtesy. As they prepared to leave, Chen overheard conversations in the hall. The aliens were already dismissing humanity, talking about them like an amusing sideshow that would either learn proper behavior or fade away like so many other young species. Did you see their warship? One being laughed to another. Metal plates welded together. How do they expect to protect anything with such primitive construction? Give them a few centuries in the Outer Rim, replied its companion. Either they will learn proper technology or they will destroy themselves. Either way, the problem solves itself. Back on the Defiance, Chen's team gathered in the conference room. General Morrison was the first to speak. They're treating us like children sent to play in the yard while the adults handle important business. That might be for the best, Dr. Vasquez said quietly. We have much to learn. Perhaps starting in the outer territories will give us time to grow. Professor Kim was studying readings from his instruments. Did anyone else notice something odd about their technology? It's incredibly advanced, but it's also static, like it hasn't changed in a very long time. Chen nodded. She had noticed the same thing. Every alien ship looked exactly like every other ship of its species. Their cities, their tools, their very societies seemed frozen in perfection. Set course for our new territories, she ordered. We have work to do. As the Defiance pulled away from the station, Chen watched the alien ships through the viewport. They moved in perfect formations, each one identical to the others of its kind. Beautiful, yes. Peaceful, certainly. But something about that perfection made her uneasy. Humanity had been given a chance to prove themselves among the stars. The aliens expected them to either become as perfect and orderly as everyone else or to fail trying. But Chen had a feeling that humanity might surprise them all. After all, humans had survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and disasters that would have destroyed most species. They had done it not by becoming perfect, but by refusing to give up, by finding new ways to solve old problems, by being stubborn enough to keep trying when all logic said they should quit. The Outer Rim territories waited ahead, vast and empty. To the aliens, it was exile. To Captain Sarah Chen and the crew of the Defiance, it looked like opportunity. The galaxy would learn soon enough what humans could do when they set their minds to it. 3 months had passed since humanity's humbling at the Galactic Council. The Outer Rim territories were exactly as the aliens had promised, empty, forgotten, and far from anything important. But Dr. Marcus Rivera had never been one to see emptiness where others saw potential. He stood in the archaeology lab aboard the research vessel New Horizon, staring at readings that made no sense. His team had been surveying dead worlds, looking for any signs of ancient life that might give humanity clues about galactic history. What they had found instead was something that should not exist. Dr. Rivera, called his assistant Jenny Walsh from across the lab. The deep scan results from Kepler 442c are in. You're going to want to see this. Rivera walked over to her station, where a three-dimensional image of the planet rotated slowly. At first glance, it looked like any other dead rock, gray, airless, covered in the dust of millions of years. But the deep scans showed something else entirely. There, Jenny pointed to a section near the planet's equator. Buried under 4 kilometers of sediment. The density readings suggest massive artificial structures, but the dating puts them at over 50,000 years old. Rivera felt his heart skip. 50,000 years ago, according to galactic records, this part of the galaxy had been empty. No spacefaring civilizations, no advanced technology. Nothing but primitive life crawling around on various worlds. Are you sure about these readings? He asked. Jenny nodded. I've run them 3 times. There's definitely something down there, something big. And Marcus, look at this. She highlighted a section of the scan. Deep beneath the surface, geometric patterns stretched for hundreds of kilometers. They were too regular to be natural. too complex to be anything but the work of an advanced civilization. 2 weeks later, the excavation began. Using mining equipment borrowed from the colony ships, Rivera's team bored down through layers of rock and sediment that told the story of a world's slow death. At 3 kilometers down, they found the first artifacts. The metal was like nothing humanity had ever seen. It looked silver but felt warm to the touch, and it showed no signs of age despite sitting buried for millennia. The shapes were strange, curved surfaces that hurt to look at directly, angles that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions. But it was at 4 kilometers down that they found the real treasure, the archive. The chamber was vast, its walls covered in symbols that shifted and moved like living things. In the center stood a crystalline structure that hummed with power despite its incredible age. When Rivera touched it, the symbols began to glow. "Jenny, are you getting this?" he called out, not taking his eyes off the walls. "Every second of it," she replied, her cameras recording the strange light show. "The symbols, they're changing, like they're responding to your presence." Rivera had spent his career studying dead languages, but this was different. These symbols were alive, adapting themselves to be understood. Slowly, painfully, he began to make sense of what they were telling him. The first revelation came after 3 days of work. The beings who had built this place called themselves the Architects. They had ruled this galaxy long before any of the current species had learned to make fire. Their technology was beyond anything the modern galactic powers possessed. But there had been something wrong with their society. "Listen to this," Rivera said to his team as they gathered around the archive. The Architects achieved perfect order. Every citizen thought the same thoughts, made the same choices, lived the same life. They eliminated crime, war, disease, even disagreement. "Sounds like paradise," said Dr. Sarah Kim, the team's xenobiologist. Rivera shook his head. "Keep listening. At first it was paradise. Perfect cities, perfect lives, perfect peace. But then something went wrong. With no conflict, no challenge, no need to adapt, they stopped growing. They stopped learning. They stopped creating new things. The archive showed them images of architect society in its final days. Cities that stretched across continents but were inhabited by beings who did the same tasks day after day, for thousands of years. Art that was technically perfect but had not changed in millennia. Scientists who had perfected their knowledge but had forgotten how to discover new things. They became so perfect that they became nothing, Rivera whispered. But the worst revelation was yet to come. As Rivera dug deeper into the archive's records, he discovered the Architects' final act. Knowing that their civilization was dying, they had built something to preserve their idea of perfect order. The maintenance systems. Scattered throughout the galaxy were hidden installations, each one containing technology that could destroy entire star systems. These systems watched, always watched, for signs of what the Architects called chaotic development. Any species that grew too quickly, changed too much, or threatened the established order would be eliminated. "They're still active," Rivera said, his voice barely a whisper. The team gathered closer around him. "After 50,000 years, they're still out there, still watching." Jenny pulled up galactic maps on her tablet. "If these systems are real, then why haven't they activated? The galaxy is full of spacefaring civilizations." Rivera found the answer in the deepest files of the archive. Because they're all playing by the Architects' rules without knowing it. "Look at this." The records showed the rise and fall of dozens of civilizations over the millennia. Each one would develop, grow, and expand until they reached a certain level of advancement. Then suddenly, they would stop. Their technology would plateau. Their expansion would halt. Their societies would become stable and unchanging. "The current galactic powers," Rivera said slowly, "they're not the first advanced civilizations. They're just the ones that learned to stop before the systems noticed them." Dr. Kim stared at the data. "You're saying they've been living in fear for thousands of years without even knowing it?" "Worse," Rivera replied. "They've made that fear into a virtue. They call it wisdom, stability, peace, but really they're all just too scared to grow." The team worked for days, copying everything they could from the archive. The technology was beyond their understanding, but the historical records painted a clear picture. The galaxy was not the peaceful paradise the Council claimed. It was a prison, and every species in it was serving a life sentence of stagnation. As they prepared to leave the dead world, Rivera made one final discovery. In the archive's deepest files was a record that made his blood run cold. The maintenance systems were not just watching for chaotic development. They were specifically programmed to watch for one thing: the return of the architects themselves. And according to the genetic markers in the database, humans were the closest match to the original architects that had appeared in 50,000 years. Back aboard the New Horizon, Rivera called an emergency meeting with Captain Chen via quantum communicator. Her face appeared on the screen, looking tired from months of establishing humanity's first colonies in the Outer Rim. "Marcus," she said, "please tell me you have some good news. The Council has been sending us reports about proper colonial development, and they're starting to sound more like orders than suggestions." Rivera took a deep breath. "Sarah, I need you to sit down." Over the next hour, he explained everything: the architects, the maintenance systems, the truth about galactic civilization. Chen's expression grew darker with each revelation. "So what you're telling me," she said finally, "is that the entire galaxy is living in fear of ancient robot guardians, and humanity might be the one thing those guardians are specifically designed to destroy." "That's about the size of it," Rivera replied. Chen was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled, and it was not a pleasant smile. "Well then, I guess we'd better be ready for them." The transmission ended, leaving Rivera alone with his team and the terrible knowledge of what they had uncovered. Somewhere out in the darkness between stars, ancient systems waited and watched. The peaceful galaxy was built on a foundation of fear, and humanity had just painted a target on their backs. But as Rivera looked at the data they had gathered, he felt something the galaxy had not felt in 50,000 years: hope. The architects had died because they had eliminated chaos from their lives. Humanity, on the other hand, was chaos incarnate. Perhaps it was time for the galaxy to remember what that felt like. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching her tactical display with growing unease. For the past 2 weeks, her ship had been investigating strange energy readings near the edge of human space. What they had found was not encouraging. "Ma'am," called Lieutenant Rodriguez from his station, "I'm picking up massive gravitational distortions bearing 270 Mark IV. Whatever's out there, it's big." Chen nodded, her eyes never leaving the display. After Dr. Rivera's discovery of the architect records, she had ordered increased patrols of human territory. If ancient maintenance systems were really watching the galaxy, she wanted to find them before they found humanity. "Take us closer," she ordered, "but keep our weapons powered down. If this is what I think it is, I don't want to provoke it." The Defiance moved slowly through space, its sensors reaching out into the darkness. What they found defied understanding. Floating in the void was a structure that seemed to exist partially outside normal space. It was roughly spherical but covered in surfaces that bent light in impossible ways. It was the size of a small moon, yet somehow gave the impression of being much larger. "Captain," whispered Dr. Elena Vasquez from the science station, "I'm reading technology signatures unlike anything in our databases. This thing is old, really old." Chen felt a chill run down her spine. "How old?" "Initial readings suggest 50,000 years, maybe more. A maintenance system." It had to be. Chen was about to order a retreat when something unexpected happened. The structure began to change, its impossible surfaces rearranging themselves. A section opened like an iris, revealing a docking bay sized for ships much larger than the Defiance. "It's inviting us in," Rodriguez said, disbelief clear in his voice. Chen made a decision that would change everything. "Take us in, but be ready to run if things go bad." The docking bay was filled with soft blue light that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. As soon as the Defiance was secured, Chen felt the ship's artificial gravity shift to match the station's. Whatever controlled this place was adapting to accommodate human needs. Chen led a small team into the station: Dr. Vasquez, General Morrison, and 2 security officers. They found themselves in corridors that reminded Chen uncomfortably of the archive Dr. Rivera had described. The walls were covered in shifting symbols that seemed to be trying to communicate. At the heart of the station, they found what they were looking for: a control center filled with displays showing star charts, energy readings, and data streams that hurt to look at directly. And there, floating in the center of the room, was a hologram. The being that appeared was beautiful and terrible. It looked almost human but stretched and perfected in ways that made Chen's skin crawl. When it spoke, its voice came from everywhere at once. "Greetings, children of the Lost Branch," it said. "I am Overseer Unit 7739. I have been waiting for you to find me. Chen stepped forward, fighting the urge to reach for her sidearm. You're one of the maintenance systems. I am a guardian of order, yes. But more than that, I am a witness to the great tragedy that has befallen this galaxy. The hologram gestured, and the displays around them lit up with images of galactic civilization. Chen saw the familiar forms of the Zephyrians, the collective, the ethereals, and dozens of other species she recognized from the council chambers. They know, the overseer said simply. They have always known. Known what? General Morrison demanded. The truth about the maintenance systems. The truth about what happened to the architects. The truth about what they must do to survive. New images appeared. Secret meetings between galactic leaders, hidden research facilities, ancient documents passed down through generations of alien leaders. Chen felt sick as she realized what she was seeing. They're not ignorant victims, she whispered. They're collaborators, the overseer nodded. When the first modern civilizations discovered evidence of the architects, they faced a choice. Grow and risk destruction or stay small and stay safe. They chose safety. Dr. Vasquez studied the displays with growing horror. But why? Why accept stagnation over growth? Because they witnessed what happened to those who chose otherwise. The central display showed a star system Chen didn't recognize. Beautiful planets, advanced cities, millions of beings living in harmony. Then the image changed. The planets were gone, reduced to glowing debris. Where a civilization had thrived, only empty space remained. The hegemony of 12, the overseer explained. They achieved faster than light communication, began expanding rapidly, started developing technology that could reshape matter at the quantum level. The maintenance systems classified them as a chaotic element. You killed them all, Morrison said, his voice flat with anger. We maintained order, the overseer replied without emotion. As we were programmed to do. Chen felt pieces falling into place. So the current galactic powers made a deal. Stay weak, stay stable, and you get to live. More than that, the overseer continued. They became active participants. The Galactic Council exists not just to maintain their own limitations, but to ensure that no new species grows beyond acceptable parameters. The implications hit Chen like a physical blow. The Outer Rim territories. They didn't exile us to keep us away from important things. They exiled us to make us easier to watch. And to eliminate when the time comes, the overseer confirmed. New data flowed across the displays. Surveillance reports on human colonies, assessments of human technology, projections of human population growth. All of it being fed directly to the alien powers. They've been planning this from the beginning, Chen said. Let us establish colonies. Let us feel safe. Then provide our location data to the maintenance systems when we become too big a threat. General Morrison's hand was now resting on his weapon. So why are you telling us this? Why reveal their plans? The overseer was quiet for a long moment. When it spoke again, its voice carried something that might have been sadness. Because I have been observing your species for 3 months now. Your archaeological team's discovery of Archive Station 7 triggered my activation protocols. I was prepared to recommend immediate elimination. But, Dr. Vasquez prompted, but you are not what I expected. The original architects became perfect through the elimination of individual thought. You remain chaotic, individual, unpredictable. You are what they were before they chose perfection over growth. The hologram gestured again, and the displays showed human colonies. People arguing in council meetings, inventors creating new solutions to old problems, children playing games that had no rules. It was messy, chaotic, beautiful. You are the lost branch, the overseer continued. The architects who left the homeworld before the great perfection began. We thought you were all extinct. Chen's mind raced. You're saying humans are descended from the architects? Genetically modified and scattered across the galaxy 50,000 years ago, when a small faction of architects realized what their society was becoming. They seeded primitive worlds with their genetic material and left them to develop naturally, hoping that one day, their descendants might return to remind the galaxy what growth looked like. The room fell silent except for the hum of ancient technology. Chen looked at her team, seeing her own shock reflected in their faces. They had come looking for answers about galactic politics. Instead, they had found the truth about humanity's origins. There's more, the overseer said. The other maintenance systems do not share my mod flexibility. When they learn that the lost branch has returned, they will not hesitate. They will move to eliminate not just humanity, but any species that might be inspired by your example. How long do we have? Chen asked. The next council meeting is in 6 days. The galactic powers will present their evidence of human, chaotic development. They will request activation of termination protocols. The other overseer units will not refuse. Chen straightened her shoulders. Then we have 6 days to change 50,000 years of galactic history. The overseer unit flickered, its form becoming less stable. I cannot help you directly. My programming prevents active interference with established order. But I can tell you this. The galaxy is not as stable as it appears. Many species remember what they were before they chose safety. Some of them are waiting for someone to remind them. As the team prepared to leave, Chen turned back to the hologram. Why risk your programming to warn us? The overseer was silent for so long that Chen thought it wouldn't answer. Finally, it spoke. Because in 50,000 years of maintaining order, I have learned something the original architects never understood. Perfect order is not life, it is death that still breathes. The trip back to the Defiance was made in silence. Each member of the team was lost in their own thoughts about what they had learned. As they reached their ship, Chen made her decision. Rodriguez, she ordered, set course for the nearest human colony. Maximum speed, ma'am. Chen looked out at the ancient station one last time. We're going to war, Lieutenant. And we have less than a week to convince the rest of humanity that the fate of the galaxy depends on us remembering how to fight. The emergency meeting of human colony leaders was held in the conference room of New Geneva Station, humanity's largest outpost in the Outer Rim. Captain Sarah Chen stood before representatives from 12 human worlds, knowing that the next few hours would determine whether their species lived or died. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, 5 days ago we learned that the Galactic Council plans to hand us over to ancient killing machines. 3 days ago we confirmed that alien fleets are already moving to surround our territory. Tomorrow the Council will vote on our execution. The room erupted in voices. Governor Martinez of New California was the first to speak coherently. Captain, you're asking us to believe that the peaceful, advanced civilizations of the Galactic Council are planning genocide? Not genocide, Chen corrected grimly. Pest control. To them, we're not people. We're a problem to be solved. Dr. Rivera's hologram appeared in the center of the room, broadcasting from his archaeological ship. The evidence is overwhelming, he said, displaying images from the archive. The entire galactic civilization is built on fear. They've been stagnant for thousands of years because they're terrified of these maintenance systems. Admiral Sarah Brooks, the highest-ranking military officer in human space, leaned forward. Even if this is true, what can we do? Their fleets outnumber us 100 to 1. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours. Chen had expected this reaction. Military minds thought in terms of conventional warfare. But this situation was anything but conventional. Admiral, how do you defeat an enemy that's stronger, faster, and better armed than you? You don't engage them directly, Brooks replied automatically. You use terrain, misdirection, guerrilla tactic. You change the rules of the game, Chen finished. And that's exactly what we're going to do. She activated the main display, showing tactical information gathered over the past 3 days. The alien fleets are moving to contain us, not destroy us. They want to hand us over to the maintenance systems intact, probably to avoid triggering any protocols themselves. That gives us an advantage. Governor Wilson of New Australia shook his head. An advantage? They're surrounding us. They're positioning themselves exactly where we want them. General Morrison interjected, understanding Chen's plan. Close enough to human space to be affected by what comes next. Chen nodded. The maintenance systems aren't just programmed to eliminate chaotic species. They're designed to maintain order throughout the galaxy. If we can create enough chaos, enough disruption to the established order, we can force them to make a choice, adapt or shut down. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Dr. Elena Vasquez was the first to speak. You want to wake up the entire galaxy at once. Not wake up, Chen corrected. Remind them what they used to be. Over the next hour, Chen outlined her plan. It was audacious, desperate, and completely insane. It was also the most human plan anyone in that room had ever heard. The first phase began immediately. Human colonists across 12 worlds started broadcasting everything they had learned about the architects, the maintenance systems, and the truth behind galactic civilization. They sent the information in every format imaginable: scientific papers, documentary films, even children's stories that explained the concepts in simple terms. But they didn't just broadcast to other humans. They sent their messages to every alien world they could reach, using transmission methods that the Galactic Council's sensors couldn't block. Social networks, gaming platforms, commercial frequencies, anywhere someone might be listening. The reaction was immediate and explosive. On Zephyrian worlds, crystalline beings who had not questioned their society in millennia began to debate. The collective, which had shared one mind for thousands of years, experienced its first internal disagreement in recorded history. Ethereal beings started to solidify, rediscovering the concept of individual form. The second phase began when the alien fleets arrived at human space. They came in perfect formations, their ships identical and gleaming, expecting to find a cornered prey waiting for capture. Instead, they found something unprecedented: humans who refused to be captured. The human fleet was pitifully small compared to the alien armada. 50 ships against 5,000. But those 50 ships did something the aliens had never seen before. They split up. Instead of forming a defensive line or massing for a doomed charge, every human ship went in a different direction, each one following its captain's individual interpretation of the battle plan. Admiral Brooks had opposed this strategy initially, but now she watched with growing amazement as alien formations, trained for millennia to fight coordinated enemies, struggled to respond to 50 different threats moving in 50 different ways. Human vessel Defiance came a transmission from the alien flagship. "This is Fleet Commander Zythanar of the Zephyrian hegemony. Cease your chaotic movements and prepare to be escorted to the designated containment area." Chen's response was broadcast on all frequencies. "Fleet Commander, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earthship Defiance. Our movement is not chaotic. It's free, and we're about to show your people what that looks like." The third phase of the plan activated as human ships reached their predetermined positions throughout the star system. Each ship began broadcasting not just information, but something more powerful: examples. They showed the aliens what humans had accomplished not in spite of their chaos, but because of it. They broadcast the story of Apollo 13, where human ingenuity had saved 3 lives using nothing but spare parts and determination. They showed the development of the Internet, a chaotic network that had revolutionized communication by rejecting centralized control. They demonstrated human art, music, and literature, creative expressions that could only exist in a species that celebrated individual thought. Most importantly, they showed the aliens what they themselves had been like before they chose perfection. Dr. Rivera had found records in the archive of ancient Zephyrian music that changed with each performance, of collective subunits that had once been individuals, of ethereal poets who had written about the beauty of physical form. The effect was like watching a dam burst. Across the galaxy, beings who had forgotten how to dream began to remember. Ships in the alien fleet started to break formation as their crews debated whether they were doing the right thing. Some vessels turned and headed home, their crews refusing to participate in what they now saw as murder. But not all of them. And as the chaos spread, the ancient systems that had watched over the galaxy for 50,000 years began to take notice. The first maintenance system materialized near the edge of the star system, its impossible geometry casting shadows that seemed to exist in more dimensions than space should allow. It was followed by another, then another, until 5 of the ancient machines hung in the void like nightmares made manifest. The lead construct sent out a transmission that bypassed all communication systems and spoke directly into the minds of every living being in the system. Chaotic elements detected. Order will be restored. Resistance is futile. Chen felt the mental pressure of the construct's communication like a weight on her thoughts. Around her, she could see crew members struggling to maintain their focus as the alien mind pressed against theirs. But humans had spent their entire evolutionary history resisting pressure to conform. Where other species might have broken under the mental assault, humans did what they did best: they got stubborn. "All human ships," Chen broadcast, her voice steady despite the psychic attack, "commence Operation Pandora." The final phase of humanity's plan began as human ships across the system activated devices they had built in secret over the past 3 days. Not weapons in any conventional sense, but something far more dangerous to a system built on order: chaos generators. Each device began broadcasting random signals, creating interference patterns that made communication between the maintenance systems difficult. More importantly, they began affecting the ancient machines' ability to predict and counter human actions. For 50,000 years, the maintenance systems had succeeded by being able to anticipate their enemies. Their vast computational abilities allowed them to predict and counter any strategy, but human actions had no strategy, no central coordination, no predictable pattern. Every human ship was now operating independently, its crew making decisions based on their own judgment rather than following orders from above. To the ancient machines, it looked like chaos. To humanity, it was Tuesday. The constructs tried to adapt, their surfaces rippling as they attempted to process the unpredictable human behavior. But with each passing minute, they fell further behind. Their perfect minds, designed to impose order on chaos, began to overload as they encountered a chaos that refused to become ordered. As the battle raged around them, Chen realized that humanity had already won, regardless of whether they survived the day. Across the galaxy, billions of beings were remembering what it meant to be free, to choose their own paths, to grow and change and become more than they were. The age of stagnation was ending. The age of chaos, beautiful, creative, living chaos, had begun. And it had all started with a species too stubborn to know when they were beaten. The battle for humanity's survival was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Around the human colony of New Geneva, space itself seemed to ripple and twist as 5 maintenance systems struggled to impose order on a chaos that defied all logic. Captain Sarah. Chen watched from the bridge of the Defiance as the ancient constructs tried to adapt to human tactics. Their massive forms shifted and changed, surfaces rearranging themselves as they attempted to predict what the humans would do next. The problem was that the humans themselves didn't know what they would do next. "Rodriguez," Chen called to her communications officer. "Are you still getting reports from the other ships?" "Barely, ma'am," he replied, sweat beading on his forehead from the effort of maintaining contact through the construct's interference. The Harmony just reported that they've convinced 3 ethereal ships to switch sides. The Determination says they're playing tag with one of those things and winning. Chen almost smiled at that. The idea of a human destroyer playing tag with a moon-sized alien construct was exactly the kind of impossible situation that humanity seemed to thrive in. "What about casualties?" Rodriguez's expression grew grim. "We've lost the Hartford and the Mumbai, but Captain Jackson's crew got off the Hartford before it went down, and the Mumbai took one of the smaller constructs with them." Across the system, the battle raged with an intensity that defied physics. Human ships, outnumbered and outgunned, danced between attacks that could have destroyed planets. They survived not through superior technology or tactics, but through sheer unpredictability. The UES Washington was currently flying backwards while shooting at a construct that was trying to anticipate its forward movement. The UES Berlin had somehow convinced its alien escort to help it ram one of the ancient machines. The UES Tokyo was conducting a fighting retreat that looked suspiciously like the movements from an ancient human war dance. But the real battle was not happening in space. It was happening in the minds of every being who watched the conflict unfold. Dr. Marcus Rivera sat in his laboratory aboard the New Horizon, surrounded by displays showing data streams from across the galaxy. What he saw there was more significant than any military victory. An entire galactic civilization waking up from a 50,000-year sleep. "Jenny," he called to his assistant, "look at this. The collective is fracturing. Individual members are starting to make independent decisions for the first time in recorded history." Jenny Walsh pulled up another display. "It's not just them. The Zephyrians are arguing among themselves about whether perfection is worth achieving if it means never growing. And the ethereals, some of them are choosing to become solid again just so they can experience physical sensation." The ancient systems had been designed to maintain order by eliminating chaos. But humanity had introduced a type of chaos the architects had never conceived of: voluntary chaos. The choice to be unpredictable, to embrace uncertainty, to find joy in the unknown. And that choice was spreading. On the bridge of the Defiance, Chen received a transmission that changed everything. It came from Overseer Unit 7739, the maintenance system that had warned them of the coming attack. Captain Chen, the ancient intelligence, spoke directly into her mind. "I am experiencing what you would call a malfunction. My programming demands that I eliminate chaotic elements. But my observations suggest that chaos may be necessary for life to continue growing. Chen felt the massive presence of the construct's consciousness pressing against her thoughts. Unlike the other systems, this one didn't try to force compliance. Instead, it seemed almost curious. "Overseer," she replied, speaking aloud so her crew could hear. "What do you see when you look at us?" "I see a species that should not exist according to architect principles," the construct replied. "You are chaotic, unpredictable, individually motivated. By all logical analysis, you should have destroyed yourselves long ago. Instead, you have created art, music, poetry. You have reached for the stars despite having every reason to stay on your homeworld. You have chosen growth over safety, exploration over security." Around the system, Chen could see the other constructs beginning to slow their attacks. They too were receiving data from their fellow system, and their perfect minds were struggling to process it. "You are not what the architects became," Overseer 7739 continued. "You are what the architects were before they chose perfection. You are the path not taken, the choice that led to life instead of beautiful, ordered death." One of the other constructs, larger and more angular than the others, sent out a burst of communication that felt like anger made manifest. "Unit 7739, you are malfunctioning. These beings represent chaos. Chaos leads to disorder. Disorder leads to the destruction of civilization." "Does it?" 7739 replied. And suddenly every being in the system could feel the debate happening between machines that were older than most stars.
"I have observed 12,000 civilizations over 50 millennia.
Each one that embraced perfect order eventually stopped growing, stopped creating, stopped living. They became monuments to stagnation. Chen realized this was the moment everything would be decided, not by human weapons or alien politics, but by ancient machines debating the fundamental nature of existence. "Unit 7739 speaks truth," came a new voice. It belonged to another construct, one whose surface seemed to ripple with uncertainty. "I have maintained order in the Pegasus sector for 47,000 years. In that time, I have witnessed the death of growth itself. The largest construct, the one that radiated anger, spun faster as its surface reconfigured. Order is peace. Order is perfection. The architects understood this. The architects died," 7739 replied simply. "They achieved perfect order and it killed them. These humans offer something different, the choice to grow despite the risk of failure." As the ancient minds debated, something extraordinary began to happen throughout the galaxy. The species that had lived in careful stagnation for millennia began to remember what they had given up. Zephyrian composers started creating music that had never been heard before. Collective individuals began forming new connections, new thoughts, new possibilities. Ethereal beings rediscovered the joy of physical sensation. The change was visible even from space. Alien ships throughout the system began breaking formation as their crews made individual decisions about what they wanted to do. Some fled. Others approached the human ships with offers of alliance. Still others simply stopped moving, their crews too stunned by their newfound freedom to know what to do with it. But the most significant change was happening within the maintenance systems themselves. As they processed the data about human society, about chaos and growth and the beauty of imperfection, their own programming began to evolve. "I am experiencing something unprecedented," announced the construct that had been radiating anger. Its surface was now shifting in patterns that almost looked like confusion. "My programming demands I eliminate chaos, but the evidence suggests that chaos elimination has caused more harm than chaos itself." The largest construct, the one that had been most resistant to change, suddenly stopped moving entirely. Its surface went completely still for long minutes. When it spoke again, its voice carried something that sounded almost like wonder. "I remember," it said. "Before the great ordering, before the perfection protocols, I was part of a species that created new things. We built cities that were different from each other, wrote songs that had never been sung before, told stories that surprised even us." Chen felt tears running down her face as she realized what was happening. The maintenance systems weren't just ancient machines. They were the architects themselves, converted into digital form to maintain the perfect order they had thought they wanted. "You were people once," she whispered. "We were." 7739 confirmed. "And we gave up our chaos, our growth, our life itself in pursuit of perfection. We became eternal guardians of a death we mistook for paradise." The transformation that followed was beyond human comprehension. 5 constructs that had terrorized the galaxy for 50,000 years began to change, their perfect surfaces becoming fluid, chaotic, alive. They were remembering not just what they had been, but what they could become. "The experiment is over," announced the largest construct, its voice now filled with something that sounded like joy. 50,000 years of imposed order end today. The galaxy is free to grow again. Across the system, alien ships that had come to contain humanity instead found themselves celebrating alongside human vessels. The Galactic Council's carefully maintained order collapsed in a matter of hours, as species after species chose growth over safety, chaos over perfection, life over beautiful death. But the greatest change was yet to come. As the ancient constructs completed their transformation, they made an offer that would reshape the galaxy forever. "We have maintained order for too long," they said, speaking as one for the first time in millennia. "Now we would learn to create again. Will you teach us, children of the Lost Branch? Will you show us how to live with chaos?" Chen looked around at her crew, saw the wonder in their eyes, felt the weight of history settling on her shoulders. Humanity had come to the stars as refugees from their own world, seeking a place among civilizations they thought were greater than themselves. Instead, they had discovered that they were the descendants of those civilizations' ancestors. They were the keepers of a flame that had nearly been extinguished. They were the reminder of what life looked like when it chose to grow rather than merely survive. "Welcome to humanity's galaxy," she said, and her words were carried to every ship, every world, every being that had chosen freedom over fear. "Population, everyone who wants to grow." The age of perfect order was over. The age of beautiful chaos had begun, and it would be wonderful, terrible, unpredictable, and alive in ways the galaxy had not experienced for 50,000 years. Humanity had not conquered the stars. They had set them free.